Hey guys, it's Stephanie here with Festive Creations by Stephanie, going to show you how to make your Bee in Flight Grapevine kit. So for this, you will receive your 14-inch grapevine, 3 rolls of ribbon, all 1.5 inch, this adorable bee pick, a eucalyptus bush, a sunflower bush, and a lavender bush. Some tools that you're going to need are simply some wire cutters, some sharp scissors for your ribbon, some floral wire, and a glue gun. Let's get started. So the first thing that we're going to do is prep our grapevine. If your grapevine has any leaves or foreign debris, you can also trim off any loose branches, such as this one here that's kind of sticking out a little bit. I just take my wire cutters and trim those right off. Then the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to take our eucalyptus bush and we're going to start cutting it apart. This bush has 7 stems, or 7 stems on it. So we're going to use 1, 2, 3, 4 for right now. And for the design that I'm making you today, of course, you can do this however you want, is I'm going to start with the eucalyptus. So I'm going to place that down underneath the grapevine. And look at my placement. I want it kind of centered within the grapevine. And as we go along, whether or not you use a glue pot or a glue gun, you can add glue. But if you're not certain about placement, don't glue it down yet until you're sure where you have things placed. And then I'm going to come just the opposite of this. It's all wired, so you can bend it. And I'm going to bring my eucalyptus down here and just feed it through the grapevine. So I have one up here, one down here. If I'm happy with placement, I'm going to glue those in place. Then I'm going to take my next eucalyptus and I'm going to layer that right on top. My glue gun's not quite warmed up yet, so I will go back and put a spot of glue in there. And we're going to do the same thing at the bottom. We're going to layer it right on top. If you get that stem placed deep enough in the grapevine, it should not shift and your stems should not come through the backside of your grapevine. So you want to get those in place. I don't cut them off super short because I want them to kind of dig into the grapevine. And we're going to layer one more up here. And one more this direction. Perfect. All right, let's see if the glue gun is ready for me. Of course, I always have to be very conscientious about the glue dripping through the grapevine. So if you're not sure, make sure you're aware of what surface you're on when you add your glue to the grapevine. You don't want to heat up whatever it is underneath there. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our lavender bush and we're going to dissect it as well. So we'll go ahead and cut those off. The lavender bush also has 7 stems on it. And depending on how you want to present this, you can leave the lavender bushes long, or if you want to make them shorter, you can cut it again and have a separate piece in there. I'm going to choose to leave mine longer. And we're going to add that underneath the eucalyptus. And we're going to make it a little opposite. So you noticed how I brought this one kind of coming down. I'm going to go on the inside now and bring it, the next one, to the inside. We're going to do the same thing at the top. Bring one towards the inside of our grapevine. And one towards the outside. Now let's take our sunflower bush. And the leaves do slide on this, so I always like to leave the greenery attached. And we're going to cut a couple of these a little on the shorter side, maybe about 4 inches from the head of the sunflower. And bring it back around this way. And these shorter ones, once I can get them to go in, there we go. All right. So we're going to bring those a little bit closer to the grapevine. Our next one, we're going to cut just a little bit longer. The next two, I should say. And kind of cascade those out. If it's easier for you to stay equal, I can go all the way around. Or if you want to make it more even, I would suggest you place them about the same time rather than continue to cascade. But remember that we want it to look as natural as possible. So everything doesn't need to be exactly the same length apart, the same width. We want it to look like it's naturally growing in our grapevine. I'm using the second set of leaves and I'm pushing them towards the grapevine, almost to where my, well, right where my glue is touching. So that then becomes part of my grapevine, but it camouflages my mechanics of my glue, right? So we don't want any mechanics showing through when we get done. Let's go up here and add another one up top. Again, I'm going to take that second set of leaves, push it down as close to the grapevine as possible. Being careful not to get your hands in the glue, please, and thank you. Now we're going to take our Bumblebee pick. And the Bumblebee pick is completely wired. So I take advantage of that wire. The wings are wired. You can actually bend those so that they're not straight out. Makes it give a little bit more natural look. Same way with the antenna. The antenna are wired. So I want to make sure everything kind of looks as natural as possible. And for this, I'm going to cut it off about right there. And we're going to find the front of our bumblebees. And bring that down inside of our grapevine. I'm going to position this one facing my way a little bit more. All right, so I can make them do whatever I need to. Now, before I go any further, I want to show you what this looks like from the side view. You'll notice how that I've kind of built up and away from the grapevine. And that goes with our bees as well. So once we have that placement, we're going to glue that down. Now, that last bush of eucalyptus that has not been used yet, this is where you want to kind of take it and break it off into little pieces. And now you have something to go back in and add. If there's any glue showing, guess what? This is your filler to hide any remaining mechanics. So the last thing that we want is to have glue showing. And we're going to add a bow here, so I'm not going to stress over that. However, I've got a little bit of glue here. So I'm going to go tuck that underneath there and camouflage all of that. I always look from the sides. I look from every angle. Think about your customer, where they're going to place it on their door or on their wall. Are you going to have somebody looking up into it from the sides? So we want it to look good from all angles. Now, I'm not a wasteful person, so I can either hang on to these for another project, or I can go ahead and add a few more to my current design and give it a little more fill, a little more. That's good enough for right now. If we need to fill any more in later, we can come back and do that. Let's make a pretty bow and add to our grapevine. So for the ribbon we chose for this kit, I chose the yellow and black polka dot, of course the bumblebee, and the yellow and black striped check. I'm going to be using my Easy Bow Maker. I'm going to use a piece of floral wire, about 20 inches long just because I like to have enough. And we're actually going to start out. You can start out with either one. If you want to do the polka dots on the bottom or the striped check, I would recommend putting the ladybugs in the center. And this little guy is going to have not real super long tails. So let me dovetail this end. So we're going to do somewhere between 6 and 7 inches. Take our ribbon and twist it. And do out to the 6-inch mark. Give it a twist. I like to keep the loop in my ribbon as I am making my bow. Come over here, find the 6-inch mark, give it a twist, and we're going to do 3 loops on each side, the same size, all out to that 6-inch mark. On the last one, you don't have to twist it. You do want to make sure that it's pushed down good. We're going to come out here and I'm going to bring this tail opposite of my first tail. You can go ahead and dovetail this now, or a lot of times I wait until I get completely done to dovetail the opposite side. It's just my habit. All right, let's take our next one, which is our Bumblebee. And we're going to start off the same way, dovetail the edges. Give it a cute little tail. But this time we're going to come in, instead of going all the way out to the 6, we're going to come in about somewhere between 1/2 inch to 1 inch and shorten this loop a little bit shorter so that I can see the ribbon behind it. We're going to do 3 loops of that. Push those down in the center, and now we're going to use our final ribbon. On our final loop, again, we're going to come in about 1/2 inch to 1 inch so that we can see the ribbon behind it. And for this one, we're going to do 2 loops on each side. But we're going to do 1 extra loop right in the center. So we're going to twist this one. We're going to do about 1 inch loop. See how I made this short loop right here? My tails are both going to be on the same side, but that's okay because we're going to fix that here shortly. We're going to cut my tail. And now when we take our wire, I'm going to take it between the 2 pegs, lay it right on top of that loop, go in between where we added the other ribbon. I'm kind of lifting up on it a little so that I can get a good grip. Take my wire and wrap it around. And I twist. Then I twist the ribbon, not the wire. That will create a tighter seal on my ribbon itself. So to explain that a little further, instead of tightening the wire, you want to tighten the bow. You'll get a nice, good, tight bow. Let's bring our wreath back. And yes, I could definitely fumble with straightening this out, but guess what? We're going to attach it to the wreath before we actually fluff the bow. Let me go ahead and dovetail those last few tails. And if you're not sure about the tails, guys, please feel free to leave them longer, because you can make them shorter, but you can't make them longer once you get the ribbon cut. So I'm going to take my floral wire and go down between the vines of the grapevine. If there's glue in my way, I'm just going to go around the glue. Either above it, beside it, below it. I turn that over, and I'm going to bring my wires very tight. And while I'm pulling on them, I'm going to give that a couple of good twists. And then a few more twists just for good measure. I'm going to check the bow to make sure it is where I wanted it, and it is. Yay! Now we can trim off this wire, but I leave it just a little bit longer so that I can take those edges and push them back down inside the grapevine, so I don't have any sharp edges showing. And then I also like to take one more step and add just a little spot of glue to that. And that does a couple of things. It causes that, once that glue dries, it causes it to rubberize, but it keeps your wire from shifting. And of course, it's going to protect your customer's door. Don't forget that glue's still hot, so I don't want to lay it directly on my table right now. Let me lay it right near my wire cutters. So now that I have my bow attached to my grapevine, it's so much easier to work with the ribbon. So now I can pull and twist and fluff and get my bow where I want it to be, and all my loops. And I start with the bottom loops, and I work from the bottom up. There's my first loop, my second loop, my third loop on my Bumblebee. So we did 3, 3, and 2.5. 2 and a miniature. Now that center loop right there, I'm just going to put my fingers in there and kind of give it a nice little stretching out with that wire. This tail is going to be too long, so we're going to trim that back. And I may end up trimming back a couple more tails. We'll see. But now we have got our bow all spread out, and we can see the ribbon underneath. Look at that. Look at that. Now, obviously, you do have some ribbon left over, and you are more than welcome to have fun with that ribbon. Take your favorite ribbon, or take a couple of your favorite ribbon, and you can make extension tails. So if I take these two and I pleat them together, and a piece of my floral wire, doesn't have to be super long, but now I can wrap my floral wire around the edges of this ribbon. And now I've made myself a little pick, right? What I'm going to do with this, I'm going to twist that on there. So now my tails right here have pretty much a pick. I can add this, and I'm going to cut these off. I don't need it quite as long. This wire is a 22 gauge wire, by the way. So I'm going to take this up underneath my bow, find a happy spot, slide it into the grapevine. I'm going to glue that down. Give that a chance to dry here a second. I haven't cut this yet because I want to decide how long I want to have my tails. And this is one of those things that it can vary depending on what you want to do. So while that's still drying, I'm going to talk about, you can take and pinch this into a little pleat and make a little loop right here. And then another little loop right here. To attach them to your grapevine, you're just going to put a small piece of wire and wire it to your grapevine. If you're really, really good, you could take a zip tie, but remember, you want to hide the mechanics. So you want to try and keep it as inconspicuous as possible, and maybe go under the greenery to add these loops. Let me see if he's tightening there. Oh yeah, he's good. All right. So we can just take a piece of this, a small piece of wire, wrap it around there. Lift up some greenery and go down to the grapevine. I'm going to move it in again, kind of sliding it in between the vines of the grapevine. Secure it with a little glue. And let that dry. We're going to take the opposite one while that one's drying and go over here. And I think what we're going to do, I think I kind of like it next to this one. Yeah, I do. I like it over here. Take our small piece of wire, pleat that together. Wrap it around our pleat. Go down in between the vines and give it a little spot of glue. Now you can make additional loops if you want, or at this point, you can actually just bring it down and make kind of a tail with it. And this part is totally optional, you guys. Totally optional. If you're not comfortable with adding the extra loops in there, you most certainly don't have to add them. And then what I like to do is take the ends and curl them up. A lot of times I just use my finger as the width of my finger. And I kind of give the ribbon a little pinch right there. We're going to do the same thing on this side. As soon as I let that glue dry. Roll it up. Give it a little pinch. My glue's not quite dry over here, so I'm going to leave that alone for a second. This one is totally dry. I'm going to take that inside piece and I'm just going to gently pull that out. So we're going to make this little flowing curl on the end. Now, we still have sunflowers left. Guess what? We're just going to take the very end of one and give it a short stem. I'm going to add a little glue. And we're going to put that right there near our where the extra loop came in. So now it looks like it's all natural. The greenery is growing within the ribbon, and it's not all methodically layered on top of each other. So remember, you want to try and keep it as natural looking as possible. I know our bees aren't real, but if you give it that natural flow, guess what? Mother Nature is not precise. That's what I love about working with grapevines and florals and greenery is it should not be perfect. It should not be so precise that it looks like it's factory made, right? I am going to trim this guy down just a little bit more. He's a little too long for me. I want to be able to see that eucalyptus behind it. Okay, guys. That's it. How easy is that? I will look forward to seeing what you do with your wreath kit.